Reading animal tracks, setting traps, and understanding why every choice was made is something I try to show because in Alaska, that knowledge is not only useful, it's the difference between life and death. For years, Mountain Men fans watched Marty Meierotto live that reality with a level of calm skill that made the impossible look like it was nothing out of the ordinary, flying his bush plane into remote wilderness and landing on frozen strips of land. Checking trap lines in temperatures so high that a simple mistake could kill within minutes. That's why his sudden departure from the show was so shocking and unsettling for viewers who had come to rely on him as one of the most real and grounded characters on TV. At first, many people thought the reason was simple. He had decided to retire after years of hard, physically demanding work, but as time went on and Marty started to talk openly, it became clear that the truth was much more complicated and human. He had spent years pushing his body and mind to the very limits of what they could handle in one of the harshest environments on Earth. Alaska is not just cold or far away, as most people imagine. It is a place where you are completely alone, where help is often dozens of miles away, where the weather can change from bearable to deadly in minutes, and where every choice has real, immediate consequences. And for Marty, this wasn't just a challenge once in a while, it was a way of life. It got even tougher when they had to film a TV show because the cameras had to take repeated shots and put the actors in dangerous situations for long periods of time. They also had to perform at a level that slowly pushed the limits of what was safe or sustainable, making an already hard life even tougher. The constant cold, exhaustion, and, over time, the stress of having to make life-or-death decisions while being filmed added a level of pressure that most viewers would never fully understand. This created a gap between the version of his life that viewers saw on TV and the one he actually lived every day. It was in this gap that the real cost of the show began to become clear. What seemed like adventure and excitement was actually a never-ending test of endurance that slowly wore him down, not in one dramatic moment, but in small, building ways. As his fatigue lasted longer, his recovery took longer, and his body's signals became harder to ignore, until he reached a point where continuing would have put not only his health, but also his life at risk. This risk took on even more weight when he thought about his family waiting for him at home, because Marty was a husband and a father beyond the wilderness and the cameras, and those roles carried a weight that no TV success could match. When fans found out he was leaving, they reacted quickly and emotionally. Social media was full of questions, rumors, and heartfelt messages from viewers who felt like they had lost someone familiar and important, someone whose presence had become a part of their routine. Since there wasn't much clear information, rumors spread quickly, ranging from worries about serious illness to theories about conflicts with producers or the network, and even more creative ideas that showed how close fans felt to him. But the truth was much less shocking and much more meaningful. He made an honest choice and chose to respect his limits. His experiences on the show influenced his decision, but he had also been preparing for it for a long time. He learned trapping from his father when he was young in Wisconsin, developing skills that required patience, observation, and respect for nature. At age 23, he made the life-changing decision to move to Alaska, not as an experiment or adventure, but as a permanent commitment to a way of life that required everything he had to offer. There, he built cabins by hand, set up trap lines across vast and unforgiving terrain, and made a life that depended on his own skills. There is another side to his story that many people didn't know about. His 31-year career as a smoke jumper, one of the most elite and dangerous jobs in firefighting, where he parachuted into remote wildfire zones, fought fires in extreme conditions, and developed a level of physical and mental endurance that few people ever achieve. This is why he was able to survive the challenges of the Alaskan wilderness, and why his decision to leave carried such weight. This wasn't a man who was a stranger to risk choosing an easier path. This was someone who had spent decades facing risk and knew exactly what it meant to keep pushing beyond reasonable limits, and over the years, those risks had become more real through close calls that left lasting impressions, like dangerous flights in unpredictable weather where one mistake could have ended everything, and times when he was alone without the right gear, and his only chance of survival depended on his ability to stay calm and think clearly under pressure. Each experience made him more aware of how thin the line between safety and disaster really was, and instead of making him careless or cocky, they made him more thoughtful, more aware, and ultimately more honest with himself about what he was putting his body and mind through. He could no longer see a reason to keep doing what he was doing, especially since it meant being away from his family for long periods of time, missing moments that could never be replaced, and missing the chance to teach his daughter the skills that had defined his life. This was very important to him because it meant continuing a tradition that started with his own father. So, his decision to leave Mountain Men wasn't about giving up success or fame. It was about choosing something more important, going back to a life that was calmer, more balanced, and more in sync with. Following his decision to step away from the show, he has stayed true to that choice, avoiding the fame and opportunities that come with it. Instead, he is focused on his family and the life he built in Alaska, where the wilderness is still an important part of his life, but isn't shaped by production schedules or audience expectations. The trap lines, the cabin, and the vast landscape are all his again, and he can experience them on his own terms and at his own pace, which helps him remember why he chose this life in the first place. Not for fame or attention, but for the freedom, the connection to nature, and the sense of purpose it gave him. In that way, his story is not one of disappearance or loss, but of return. A return to authenticity, to family, and to a way of life that had always been his true destination, even as millions of viewers watched from afar. Fans may still miss him on TV, but what they get to see is a deeper understanding of the man behind the character, someone who faced incredible challenges, made tough decisions, and ultimately chose a path defined not by fame, but by meaning, showing that sometimes the strongest choice a person can make is not to keep going, but to know when to step back and protect what is most important.